Welcome to Melody Makers, where we discuss arranging and composing and meet the real melody makers behind the music of Melody's traditional music, folkharp.com, and Afghan press music for the harp. I'm Gretchen Munson, harpist, pianist, organist, and arranger, and your host for today. In today's episode, we have a special guest with us. Rachel Green holds a doctorate of musical arts from the University of Arizona and was an assistant professor of harp there. She now owns Happy String Music and publishes her innovative method for the harp, the Play With Me series. Before we chat with Rachel, let's get a taste of her beautiful work. This is an arrangement of the waltz Opus 12, No. 5 by Max Bruch. Good morning, Rachel. So, what do you remember about the very first time you heard or saw a harp?
It was a very distinct memory. It was the first time I saw it was in someone's home. They had invited us over for lunch, and the wife had a harp in her living room, and I remember being impressed by the looks of the harp before I even heard it. It was beautiful. It was one of those with the carving and beautiful wood. And so after lunch, she played it for me, and I knew from that moment that's what I wanted to play. But I didn't actually start lessons for another 5 years. My parents wanted me to get to a certain level on piano first, show that I was dedicated to learning music. So I did. They told me when I could play hymns at our church, I could start lessons on any instrument I picked. So I worked for 5 years, reached that level, played at church, and I still remembered. Mom and Dad, can I start harp lessons? And I did. Immediately fell in love with it and have stayed with it since.
Wow, that is so sweet. So you went on, though, to get a DMA from the University of Arizona and were assistant professor of harp there for a year. How did you get started on the higher education path with harp?
It partially fell into my lap. I did one step at a time, especially with my late start. I was 13 when I started lessons. I didn't know what I could do in terms of a career. So I started my undergraduate, loved it. And then during my junior year, my dad was in the military and he was stationed in Tucson, Arizona. So starting then, whenever I was on break for Christmas break and summers, I started lessons with Dr. McLaughlin. And she and I worked really well together. She offered me the TA position at the University of Arizona, and that kind of made it a no-brainer. My school was covered, and we loved working together, and just one degree followed after the next.
Wow. So what is something you would want every harpist to know about pursuing advanced degrees beyond the bachelor's?
Well, my advice actually applies to both, but what I was thinking of sharing is my biggest advice is actually to sleep and to practice intentionally. They go hand in hand. And I developed the habit in high school of only practicing when I was fully engaged. And whenever I felt like my mind wasn't engaged with the music, I stopped. This meant I had way fewer hours of practice compared to others, but I made every moment count. So even throughout college, I would get tired in the middle of the day. And if I had a 2-hour break, I would drive 20 minutes home, take a half-hour nap, and drive back to school rather than stay on campus and get that extra 2 hours of practice. What I'd hope that other harpists learn is to be aware of their productivity level and to only practice when you're close to peak. And when you're not, go home, take a nap. You'll actually progress a lot farther. I was told so many times, in order to get a degree, you are required to practice 4 hours a day. And I think that's fairly standard. Well, now that I'm graduated, I can share that throughout my entire career, I did not practice more than 2 hours a day, but I made every moment count. So I feel like I was able to accomplish the same amount, but while taking care of my mental and physical health. And that's a topic that people are becoming more aware of, how we need to take care of our mental health. And this is one way you can do it, by being aware of your productivity level and benefiting from being wise with when you practice, and go get some sleep.
All right. So you mentioned Dr. McLaughlin, and then Kathy Moore was also one of your instructors. Share some memorable moments from studying with them.
Dr. Moore was the most happy, fun person you could possibly interact with. It was part of her personality. And my memories to her go back to the very first interaction I had with her, which was when I was visiting the school as a high school student to figure out which college I wanted to go to. And I had a sample lesson with her, went really well. And then later that evening, I happened to be there on the day they had a music gala where all the ensembles in the school performed. And she led her ensemble, her harp ensemble, and they played Pirates of the Caribbean. And they didn't just play Pirates of the Caribbean. They were decked out. Dr. Moore had a pirate's hat on. She conducted with a sword. She was moving about. She was a pirate on stage. And it just blew my mind how much fun you could have on stage. So the next day, I wanted to let her know that I really appreciated my visit. And I went and looked for a thank you gift for her in Target. I came across a Pirates of the Caribbean candy Pez dispenser. It was perfect. I gave it to her along with my card, and she just burst out laughing. She thought it was the funniest thing. And that little candy Pez dispenser sat right next to the harp on a bookshelf my entire time at University of Northern Colorado. And that just showed the relationship we had from the beginning was one of joy. And I'm sure I laughed in every single lesson I had with her. So such happy memories. So my memory from Dr. McLaughlin also stems from an early memory with her. I started studying with her during the summers, my junior year, and she opened up my world to performance skills and what it takes to give a successful performance. She introduced me to the idea of repair points, where you have particular sections marked on your music and you label them, and you learn those just as well as the start of your piece. And the idea is that if you mess up, you have a way to repair it, but also it just makes you learn the piece better to start with. So I was at UNC. I had just had a summer of lessons with Dr. McLaughlin, and I wanted to play for our school's annual solo competition. And I was working on Grajini's Rhapsody. And it's a substantial piece, and it was a push for me, and it wasn't quite ready. So Dr. Moore actually offered to give me extra lessons leading up to the competition. We did twice-a-week lessons for a while. And the lesson before the competition, I was still not ready. It was not memorized. I still hadn't gotten everything up to speed. And so she made some sort of comment, encouraged me for my effort. I learned a lot, but the piece isn't ready, so we'll have to wait for next year. Well, I had been learning all these new performance techniques from Dr. McLaughlin, and I wanted to try them out. She had also taught me how to use visual memory and all these things. So I thought, well, I'm not in it to win. I'll just play, and I want to practice these techniques that she's taught me. And so I didn't tell Dr. Moore. I just played. I thought, I'm just getting stage practice. Well, I was not nervous at all. I used the techniques I learned for staying focused, playing in a visual mode, covering up all mistakes. I was playing with music, so I had to take some extra rubato to make the page turns work. And they selected me as the winner of that round. So I wasn't quite sure what to say when I called Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, can I have a couple extra lessons? Because that was just the first round of the competition. Now I had to play the piece again a couple weeks later. So she did give me extra lessons. I managed to memorize it fairly in time. But as you can imagine, I was much more nervous for the final round. And I didn't play as well, but what I learned was invaluable. That being able to communicate music on stage is not as closely tied to a perfect performance as we think. And I was able to get in touch with what it really takes to connect with people on stage. Of course, I will attempt to learn to play a piece as written and up to speed. But I was really thankful for this experience where I learned the absolute freedom that you can have on stage and the magic of music. And Dr. McLaughlin helped bring that out in my playing. She gave me the confidence. She opened the door to that experience. After that, I did play multiple more competitions. I did place in 17 more, first place in 8 of those, and I attribute each of those to Dr. McLaughlin's being able to communicate to her students what it takes to reach an audience.
That is amazing advice and a good story. Wow. So after you taught at the university, you went on to start your own music company, Happy String Music. How did you decide to go into the publishing business?
Part of that is because of the person I married. My husband and I actually co-run Happy String Music, and he does all of the technology side. He's a software engineer. So it was a way that our skills could work together to produce a product to share. So he built my website. He made my logo. He does all the graphic design. He actually introduced me for the first time to the program I use to typeset, which is LilyPond. It's text-based. So I learned basic coding skills in order to make the scores look stunning and easy to read. So I was able to do all those things partially because of him. And then also my interest in sharing my materials and what I hope to create with the harp community. It seemed like a niche that I had found that I was exactly suited for, and I wanted to have that be my way that I contribute to the harp community.
So the main thing you published is the Play With Me series. So what's the story behind that? How did it come about?
So you remember my background. When I first started college, I was pretty sure I would never teach. And that's because I skipped those early levels myself. I taught them to myself on piano. I didn't even start piano lessons until after I started harp lessons. It was all self-taught. And so I felt completely incompetent to teach others. I had never had lessons myself. I didn't even know what teachers did in lessons. But thankfully, in college, they teach you. And I had the opportunity to take 2 semesters of piano pedagogy as well as harp pedagogy. And that piqued my interest in the pedagogy world and also gave me some basic skills. So at the University of Arizona, when I started my master's, I had started getting the idea of making a method for harp. And so I elected to take additional pedagogy classes. So in my undergrad, I was a piano major as well. And then for master's, I didn't do a degree, but I took lessons on the side. And then I also took the classes they offered. So I was able to take 2 more piano pedagogy classes and study with Dr. McLaughlin as well. So that gave me a starting place to think about, what is the philosophy of teaching? What's the purpose of a primer level book? How to introduce concepts? All of those things. And in making my method, I constantly referenced over 10 piano methods that I had studied in school and looked at things like how many pieces are in the book. You know, in harp methods, they tend to progress fairly quickly. So I thought, well, let's just count. How many pieces are there at this level? And then I took that into account in making my own. I also looked, how many pieces in 4/4 before 3/4 is introduced? Or when does the student start playing hands together? Those sorts of things. I had a starting place to look at and help guide my own work. But not just the pace, the philosophy behind Play With Me also matches that of piano methods. For example, the approach to reading music. It's called an intervallic approach. It's one of several approaches out there. And this approach starts with only seconds. So the first however many pieces, the student only has to focus on, does the note go up or down? And this trains the student, instead of getting so focused on the note name, from the very first lesson, students are learning patterns. When a professional learns a piece of music and they see an 8-note chord, we don't even think about all the note names of the chord. We're looking at the shape. Where is it? Grab it. And this is a skill we can teach from the very first day. So students start with seconds. They learn up and down. Then we introduce thirds, and the student is familiar with up and down. They only have to look, are the notes right next to each other, or is there a space in between them? And so they get comfortable with thirds. Then fourths are introduced, followed by fifths. This approach allows for more fluency in reading, and they start learning patterns, helping them learn harder pieces. So that was one way where the philosophy of piano methods influenced. Another key thing I learned from piano methods is how many concepts to include in a piece. So rhythm, what notes are used, how long the piece is, how many different patterns, all those things. And suppose you were teaching an intermediate level student and you saw a 2/3 rhythm. You're like, okay, they probably can do that. But then you're looking through the piece and you realize while they're doing that 2/3 rhythm, it's 4-note chords in each hand. You're like, okay, that makes it harder. And then you notice that they have to make a pedal change at the same time. Well, your intermediate student can do all of those things. They've played 4-note chords before. They're probably familiar with the 2/3 rhythm, and they've done pedal changes. But all at the same time, all of a sudden boost that piece to a different level. And that's one of the biggest things we encounter in beginner level music, because we're not as aware of what is hard for the student. If the rhythm pattern changes, there's a fourth followed by, you've had skip, 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 fourth, you know, that is something new for them. And then they're playing hands 2 notes together. As an advanced person, you're like, easy. But if you think a little bit more closely about what is hard for a student at the primer level, and then you write pieces such that they're only encountering 1 or at most 2 hard things at the time, the student will be able to play the piece more successfully, boosting their confidence and helping them progress faster. So in Play With Me, in the table of contents, I have listed the new concept that is being practiced, that the piece focuses on. And then you'll notice if it's a new fingering pattern, the rhythm will be simpler in that piece, probably straight quarter notes. Or if it's a new rhythm pattern, you'll notice, oh, I have not very many notes in the right hand. So I think that was one of the enlightening things I learned from the piano methods, just how basic they need to be in order for the student to successfully learn the piece the first time and give them that confidence.
Yeah, the compounding of the ideas, because you could look at a piece and say, oh, my student could play that.
Right.
And then you don't realize how much is going on at the same time. Wow. That is key to understanding how to teach. Fantastic. So every piece in the Play With Me series has a teacher duet. Why did you include teacher duets for all the pieces?
Teacher duets are a pedagogical tool, and you'll notice, once again, in the piano methods, they're pretty universally included. They teach more than people realize 4 essential musical skills. The first one is rhythm, but they also teach ensemble skills, the ability to keep going, to breathe together, to skip a note if you messed up to get back on track. And then they teach ear training. A lot of our beginner music is one note at a time, and harpists' ears can get behind what their fingers can do in terms of understanding music. And so hearing the harmonies from the teacher part are already developing their ears to discern major versus minor modes, or hearing various intervals. They haven't encountered them in their own music, but you always want a student to learn what it sounds like first. And that way, when they encounter it, it's second nature. They're like, oh, this is what my teacher's been doing. Now I can do it too. Instead of being, I've never heard the difference between major and minor before. So it develops our students' ear, and then it also develops their musical style. So students are familiar with what's a waltz pattern, what's an Alberti bass pattern. Our students are learning more about music as a whole through these teacher duets. And then I wanted to go back a little bit to rhythm and explain more specifically how the teacher duets help with the rhythm. It's both in keeping the beat as well as in teaching new rhythms. So whenever a rhythm is new in the student part, I'll design the teacher part to emphasize that rhythm. They'll either play the same rhythm as the student so the student can hear whether they match, or perhaps the teacher plays on every beat to strengthen the pulse while the student plays the new rhythm on top of that. And then on the other hand, if the rhythm in the student part is simple, that's a great time to introduce a dotted rhythm into the teacher part so that the student can become familiar with how this dotted rhythm sounds. Students always struggle like the first time they encounter a dotted rhythm in their music. And if they've heard it several times from various teacher duets, once again, it makes it easier when they encounter it in their music. They can remember what it sounded like when their teacher played with them and learn that concept more easily.
Very nice. And then out of all your arrangements and compositions, what's your favorite one and why?
I love so many arrangements. My one I go back to again and again is Ravel's Pavane for a Dead Princess. I just have happy memories with that piece to start with. I played it as a duet with cello in high school. I played it with orchestra in college. So it's just one of my favorite pieces to begin with. And I think it works especially well on harp because it has extended harmonies, but not too much chromaticism. So it is playable fairly easily on lever harp. I also like how it's slow and rolled chords. It just seems designed for harp in a way where it brings out the harmonies and richness of the instrument. And you can play it at tempo because it is a slower piece. So it's one of my favorites.
Very nice. And what current projects are you working on now?
So now that my basic series is finished, I've been working on adding supplemental material. But supplemental material is not merely supplemental. It's actually a crucial aspect in a student's learning. They need those extra pieces to develop their sight reading, to just have more familiarity with reading notes and expanding their knowledge of the repertoire. And you'll see that the piano series have this. You have your Christmas series and your hymns and your Disney, and those are designed as an extra tool in your students' learning. And so I've been working on that. We have a folk song series out there, and then most recently we released Christmas. I have my books here. I have my primer Christmas book as well as level 1. That's my newest publication. But I should say our newest publication, because I actually collaborate with Paula Smith. Since 2022, we've been working together to make these books, and it's been a wonderful collaboration. So Paula collects the pieces and arranges them and sends them to me, and then I typeset them using Lily Pond, and then I do a lot of work with the leveling. So Paula's arrangements are fabulous. They're harpistic, playable on harp, beautiful. But I do a little more work to make it specifically fit in with what a student has learned so far in my method and to make the leveling consistent. So for example, what I was describing earlier, perhaps a piece is mostly level 1, but there's a measure or two where there's too many hard things at that level. Maybe an unusual rhythmic combination with hands together or something. So then I will make the decision to either simplify the notes and keep it at level 1, or maybe I'll bump it to level 2, which then gives me liberty. Maybe I'll add a couple notes in the rest of the piece to make it solidly in level 2. So it works really well. Paula does the arranging, and then I just tweak to make it fit with my level, and then I arrange the pieces in each collection between 20 and 30 to be in matching the method, and then also in order from easiest to most difficult, no matter which book it is. So we're currently working on 2 new series. We're working on a book of hymns next, as well as a collection of classical tunes, similar to my Caterpillar Classics book, but at a slightly easier level, at that level 1.
Fantastic. And I know several parents, when I will have taught a student, say, I want to hear them play something I know. So that's fantastic that they will have the opportunity to do that.
Or with Christmas, you're like, nope, no Holy Night, not at level 1. Here's 30 pieces you can pick from. And it opens up students to be able to find something they enjoy at their level, which helps them then succeed.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your harp journey. That series is such a bonus to the harp teaching community. Your stories and your teaching expertise have been really fascinating.
Thank you.
Rachel's Play With Me series and other pieces are available on Melodies at folkharp.com. See the links in the description. To close, we have 2 recordings. The first is Flower Meadow, a student-teacher duet from the Play With Me series level 1. The second is Pavane for a Dead Princess by Marie Servelle from Caterpillar Classics, Rachel's new book of classical music for easy lever harp. Thank you for listening today. If you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. Share the Melody Makers podcast with your family, friends, and all the harp teachers you know. On behalf of Melody's Traditional Music and Afghan Press Music for the Harp, this is Gretchen Munson wishing you a joyful, music-filled day.